Hello and welcome to the EduTalk series hosted by Biotone EduPartner Program, and massage industry experts. With the growing popularity and interest of the EduTalk series, Biotone continues to support virtual learning and building massage community by connecting you with industry experts who share their knowledge and expertise on topics not only for class discussion, but career success. Today's expert is Binaifer Bugli, a licensed physical therapist with certifications in vestibular rehabilitation and craniosacral therapy. She's a diplomat and instructor for Upledger Institute International, teaching adult and pediatric level workshops. Binaifer also educates community and other professionals in craniosacral therapy, falls prevention, and vestibular rehabilitation. Let's listen and learn as Binaifer discusses craniosacral therapy and sensory processing disorders. Understanding sensory processing challenges are stress disorders and highly related to psychosomatic burnout and hypersensitivities that lead to challenges in daily functional abilities. Craniosacral therapy can help balance and regulate the autonomic nervous system, thus decreasing stress and supporting overall client health and well-being. Thank you for joining us. Please be sure to have your sound muted and your video off. Also, feel free to chat questions during Binaifer's presentation, which she will answer at the end. And with that, thank you again for joining us. And Binaifer, welcome. I will turn the screen over to you and see you on the other side. Thanks.
Thank you, Donnell. Let me just share my screen. So here we are. Are we good? Can everybody see the screen, Donnell?
Yes.
Yeah. So good evening. Thank you so much, Donnell, for the introduction. And we have limited amount of time, so I'm going to just go ahead and get started over here. This is an outline of what I plan to cover today, and then we'll follow that up with any questions that you might have. Firstly, I'm going to talk a little bit about anatomy and physiology of the craniosacral system. Then we'll go into a brief introduction for sensory integration, sensory processing disorders, and then I'll help you get a sense of what craniosacral therapy is and how it might help someone that has sensory processing challenges. Defining craniosacral system, really by definition, it's a physiological system. So it's just like your musculoskeletal system, your cardiovascular system. It's a physiological system in our bodies, and it's responsible for production, circulation, and absorption of the cerebrospinal fluid. Some of the main structures that are involved in supporting the functions of our craniosacral system are the three layers of the meninges, the membranes that surround our brain and spinal cord. The outermost layer of these meninges, or these layers, is called the dura mater. Dura mater forms the outermost boundary of your craniosacral system. And if you come down a little bit, cerebrospinal fluid is the fluid that flows within this system. And it is produced when the choroid plexuses, which are actually just capillaries with specialized cell walls, when these special capillaries filter out the blood within, out comes cerebrospinal fluid within the ventricles, and then that circulates throughout in the within the membranes, helping provide nutrition, removing waste matter, and eventually it gets reabsorbed through various channels like your arachnoid granulation bodies or arachnoid villi back into the venous blood. I had some pictures to help you visualize these structures and the cerebrospinal fluid circulation pathway. The first picture that we have right now on your screens, this person is facing towards your left hand, and the back of the head is here towards your right arm. And this is all brain tissue in here. The little arrows that keep appearing is just an animated slide. The little arrows that appear on your screen show you patterns of flow for the cerebrospinal fluid. The little green areas in the center are the ventricles, the spaces within the brain that holds where CSF is created or produced. These green areas, there's 2 lateral ventricles, there's the 3rd ventricle in here, and then down here is the 4th ventricle. The little red that you see, those are the specialized capillaries that we talked about, the choroid plexus, and the blood from within those gets filtered out into these ventricles as cerebrospinal fluid. And then it flows out through a few openings into the subarachnoid space, which is the light blue colored space around the brain that you see here, and also around the spinal cord. As the cerebrospinal fluid circulates, provides nutrition, removes waste matter, eventually through these little valves, one-way valves, the arachnoid granulation bodies, the cerebrospinal fluid flows back out into the venous blood. And this venous sinus, which is dark blue over here, these spaces are filled with venous blood, and that's why they're called the venous sinuses. And there's many of them. I'll show you pictures about that in a little bit. But that's how cerebrospinal fluid is reabsorbed into the blood supply or into the blood system. This picture is of a person facing you. So if you think of taking a little cut right through the center, like your headband cutting you through and through, you're looking at the person, and this is their skull. These are the parietal bones. That's their midline, the center of the slide. And right underneath the bone is this outer layer of the dura. Remember, we said dura mater is the outermost boundary of your craniosacral system. So if you can appreciate my mouse, that's the outer layer of the dura. The dura mater has 2 layers, an outer layer and an inner layer. The inner layer runs alongside the outer layer until it reaches key areas like the midline over here, and maybe at the level of the ears. It comes away from the outer layer at that point, and it creates this little space through which venous blood flows. Underneath that, this green line with the broccolis that you see out here, that green line is your arachnoid matter. And the little broccoli shape is actually arachnoid granulation bodies. Below the arachnoid is the subarachnoid space, and the green lines that you see throughout are little collagenous fibers that basically hold the space open for us. Below that, you see a reddish brown line that pretty much flows right alongside the brain tissue, which is right here, and it's stuck really close and tightly with and follows the brain tissue curves, valleys, all of that. And that's your pia mater. That's the innermost layer of the membrane system. So moving on, I love this picture because in this picture, you have the intracranial membranes. They've made them transparent. So you can actually see the dural venous sinuses. There's the superior sagittal sinus, the inferior sagittal sinus. Here's your straight sinus. There's 2 lateral sinuses, and then some of the other ones you can't really appreciate in this picture, but it gives you a feel for what they might look like. Here's another view of what the dural sinuses look like within the cranial cavity. And this view is from up above. So you're looking at the person's head. This is the front of their head. That's the back of their head. Here's a little eyeball for reference, and some of the other venous sinuses that you might not have been able to appreciate in the previous picture. I've included a little definition for fascia in here because our outermost layer, the dura mater that we talked about, has fascial connections. It can be considered as fascia. Also, it has fascial fibers, and it connects to the rest of the body fascia. And because of these connections to our body fascia, we can actually train our hands to palpate the craniosacral rhythm and sense restrictions deep within this fascial system in various areas of our bodies. So now that we've talked a little bit about the craniosacral system, I want to change gears and talk a little bit about sensory integration. Sensory integration, sorry, that's okay. We all have sensory organs, right? And that helps send messages to our brain. All of these sensory organs send messages to our brain about our external, but also our internal environments. Our brain has to receive and process all of these messages and then figure out how to act or respond appropriately. This ability is known as sensory processing, and this happens at a subconscious level. A few fun facts for us. Our sensory neurons, the pathways that help us bring information to our brains, actually the speed at which this information is brought to our brains is at more than twice the legal driving limit on freeways. The speed at which your brain sends messages back to your body and how to respond to this is even faster. It's like 200 miles per hour. That's really fast. So if you think about touching a hot stove, your body responds to that before you even know that you've touched it. Your brain recognizes that something is hot at a subconscious level, sends messages to your muscles, and your arms are automatically drawn back before you can even recognize that. Research says that our senses gather almost 11 million bits of information per second from our environments. That's a lot. We can't consciously process all of this information. We cannot pay attention to everything at that time. So we have to appropriately filter what comes in to our awareness or our attention, because all of this 11 million bits are at a subconscious level. So consciously, if you are doing any kind of activity that requires you to pay attention to it or recognize it at a conscious level, you can only process about 50 bits of information per second, or even less than that. So think about less than 50 bits, and then out of the 11 million bits that are coming at you every second. That's a lot of filtering that our brains have to do. And so anytime there's a glitch in our nervous system, either in receiving the information, maybe in understanding it, organizing it, or even responding to these messages, it can affect how we perceive and how we respond to our world, right? So depending on the type of challenge that an individual has, when processing sensory information, you'll see a variety of behaviors that are exhibited. And it could lead to difficulties in functioning and even learning. Now, sensory integration is a term that was coined by Jean Ayres in 1960s. More recently, we call it sensory processing. I want all of you to know we have sensory challenges, all of us. We have some likes, dislikes. Some people don't like biting into little cherry tomatoes unless those are already pre-cut. Some people, I prefer certain textures to other textures. Some people might avoid swings or even rocking chairs because they're so motion sensitive. We all have certain sensory challenges, but we can manage it. The diagnosis of sensory processing disorder is not because of these little things. It's determined based on the frequency, intensity, and duration of these issues. So when you think sensory integration, we're always thinking children. However, kids with sensory processing disorders grow up to be adults. Adults who manage their disorders by controlling the environment. I'm talking about reticular formation on your slide. If you went to school way back in the dark ages when I went to school, this area of the brain used to be called reticular formation. Nowadays, they call it reticular activating system. It's basically a key area in our around our brainstem, around a little bit below the cortex. And this area is not a well-defined structure, but it's a bunch of connected nuclei. And what it does is it modulates our responses to the world. It modulates how we take in information and recognize it and what our response to that information is. And anytime there is a high level of stress, that can lead to overworking of this area, almost to the point of dysregulation. It leaves a person in like a fight or flight type of mode constantly. Now think of the stress that you might have if you're constantly in a fight or flight sympathetic overdrive. It can cause burnout. It can cause physical burnout, emotional, mental. You're just working in overdrive every single day, all the time. That kind of overdrive, sympathetic overdrive, that can depress your immune system, and that then leads to hypersensitivities, allergies of different kinds, and basically even just challenges in day-to-day functional abilities. So sensory processing, I just want you to remember, it's a stress disorder. It causes a lot of stress in different ways for the system, for each person. Let's talk a little bit about craniosacral therapy again. Craniosacral therapy is a term that was coined by Dr. John Upledger to describe the gentle hands-on technique that we use to detect and correct imbalances within the craniosacral system. If you think of a craniosacral session, unlike a massage session, you don't need to be undressed, but we just ask that you don't wear, super tight clothes or like leather, leather clothing items or belts, wallets. That kind of stuff is harder to, very hard to feel through. But as far as what the session looks like, it's usually quiet, but not necessarily. You don't have to be still or quiet. And each session could be experienced very differently between different people, or even for the same person, it might be different. It might look different from session to session. But if you are just watching, either you're watching another person give or receive craniosacral therapy, it's like watching grass grow. You know it's happening, but you can't really see much. It'll look like somebody's sitting there with their hands on the person's body. So In craniosacral therapy, we learn how to listen and pay attention to the inner wisdom of the client's body. We learn how to gently palpate their tissues and their craniosacral rhythm. And we learn how to help support the body in releasing the imbalances and restrictions within this system. We spend a lot of time learning this, how to palpate these imbalances, how to support the body in correcting them instead of using forceful techniques. Our touch is usually very light, so the tissues don't really have to guard or defend themselves against our touch. So if you really think about how light is light, it's like enough pressure to move a leaf over the surface of a body of water without making it sink under. That's pretty light. It's like 5 grams, the weight of a nickel is what we usually say. So if you think about this, craniosacral therapy with its light touch and supportive way of facilitating tissue release, it helps decrease the stress that we hold in our tissues and through our central nervous system also. It balances out your autonomic nervous system. It helps us function from a calmer state of being instead of living in this chronic, sympathetic, overwhelmed, overstimulated place, which, if you're in that fight or flight mode, it can cause constant challenges, and that leads to stress in its own way. So we were talking about sensory processing disorder being a stress disorder. It's not just internal stress for your system, for your nervous system, for your tissues, but it's the stress of functioning in a challenging environment every single day. Everything that you do takes more effort, more challenges for your nervous system than it would for somebody who's not having trouble with sensory processing. So if we can improve the health of our central nervous system, remove all these restrictions, balance out the autonomic nervous system, which helps keep a good balance between that fight or flight mode and your rest and digest type of mode, it can help improve the health of our central nervous system. We remove fascial restrictions, so our cerebrospinal fluid flows better. That's the fluid that helps bring nutrition to our nervous system. So overall, the health of your central nervous system improves, and the health of the rest of the body, which your central nervous system controls, that improves also. Anytime you release fascial restrictions, depending on the area that you're releasing it, it will help improve fluid flow, whether that fluid is cerebrospinal fluid, blood circulation, lymphatic flow, interstitial fluid in between cells, within cells. All of that can craniosacral therapy can have an effect on all of those areas. So once you can work and live from a more balanced state of being, it helps decrease the irritation, that's constant stress and irritation that your central nervous system has, decreases the hypersensitivities that you might have by helping improve your immune system function. It helps build a good buffer for all that sensory input. Remember, we said 11 million bits, of information that comes in every second. That's a lot of sensory input. And if we could have a little extra buffer to help tolerate all that's coming in and help keep a healthy nervous system so that it can filter out what unnecessary information, like for example, I need to focus on telling you and talking with you about craniosacral therapy and sensory integration today, but I can't have my attention on maybe a humming in the light behind me or above me, or maybe there was a sound that I was aware of in the next room. I can't be distracted by that. So at a subconscious level, all of those sounds are in the background. I'm not even aware of that as I talk, pretty much, maybe not to you, but to my computer screen right now. So it helps increase your level of tolerance for functioning, and it helps you focus. How much tolerance do you have for unwanted sounds or inputs when you have a headache? You don't. Your buffer reduces. So anytime your system's irritated and functioning at this low level of irritation, it can take very little stimulus to throw you over the edge. And if you are so overstimulated that you can't even begin to comprehend what's coming at you, that can throw someone past that point of bad behavior, if you will, or, acting out, and it can put you into shutdown. Those people look like they are really the best kids, the best adults, calmest, but actually they've checked out because they're so overstimulated, they can't even function or think. So, something to keep in mind. So, having said that, I want to tell you, dwell in possibility is one of my favorite phrases, and it really, you never know what is possible when you receive craniosacral therapy. The quote below that is by Sally Fryer. I've taken it from her book. And she talks about the fact that really our belief in what is possible is what limits us in life. And so if you can just open your mind a little bit, forget about what you already know as, oh, there's no way you could do this. Well, if you didn't know that it was impossible, you might just go ahead and do it. In the same way, you might be surprised at what's really possible if you just open up and allow yourself to forget about the limits. So a few references that I have about what we've talked about so far is, there's a gazillion books out there on craniosacral work, fascial work, body work, and even sensory processing disorders, sensory integration, child development, brain development. There's just so much out there. I have taken a few things that I have referenced when putting this webinar together, and I've put that out for you guys to explore. I want to bring your attention to number 6. It's an Australian occupational therapy website, and there's a list of 10 really good books on sensory processing. And instead of listing all 10, I just put the website. I hope that's okay. The quote that I had on our previous slide was by Sally Fryer. That's number 7. That's from her book, Sensory Processing Solutions. I like that book because it's written in a way where if you already know what sensory processing is, it doesn't bore you. It's still interesting. And if you hand it to a layperson who's not familiar with the term, who has no idea what sensory integration or sensory processing disorders are, it's still simple enough language that it's really explained well and it makes sense to them. So it's helpful in that way. Both of these topics, craniosacral therapy and sensory integration or sensory processing, it takes days, no, it takes weeks to learn and years to master. So if you guys are interested in learning about craniosacral therapy, or maybe you're not, you just want to find somebody who's, who can help you, a practitioner in your area maybe, you can contact Jackie. She's going to come on in a little bit, or you can contact Upledger Institute directly, and they'll guide you. okay, I just want to say thank you to Dr. John Upledger, of course, for opening this this approach for all of us and developing this approach further for all of us. But I also want to say thank you to Upledger Institute and everybody at Upledger Institute who either directly or indirectly has been instrumental in my learning this technique and in my journey through craniosacral work. I want to definitely say thank you to Jackie and Donnell for inviting me to talk today. And of course, thank you to EduTalk and Biotone for hosting. So now that we're done with all the thank yous, I was wondering if anybody had any questions or any thoughts that you may have. I'm going to go ahead and unshare.
And thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Excellent presentation. And the way you presented it was very calming as well. We have a question from Susan. Any craniosacral therapy cautions or contraindications in pregnancy?
So for a pregnancy that's uncomplicated, just, you know, and progressing well, established, no contraindications really that I can, you know, say as such. However, I will say this, early on when we just recognize that you're pregnant, the body is seeking homeostasis. You don't want to create too much change. A lot of women, and I don't remember the percentage, but a lot of us go through miscarriages right around the time that you find out you're pregnant. You don't want to walk out of somebody's office, you know, have someone walk out of your office and have a miscarriage, and you're the only person that touched them that day. So I always say, let the body be for a little bit until pregnancy is established. And after that, it's like rearranging the condo for your baby. So it's good. It's actually great work. If you look at the Upledger website, we actually have workshops for people who are interested in pregnancy and birthing. And you could look at those, but those are more higher level classes.
Great, thank you. Shauna is saying amazing information, mentioning stress disorders being treated with craniosacral therapy. What are your thoughts on craniosacral therapy and improving symptoms of PTSD? And before you answer that, I'd also like to mention to Shauna that in the EduTalk archive library on biotone.com, we previously had a craniosacral therapist, Fred Stallman, present on CST and PTSD, and that can be found on biotone.com under the EduTalk tab in the archive library. And not to jump in and cut you off, Binaifer, from answering that, but you might have more to add.
So could you repeat the question about just, are you talking about craniosacral therapy and how it helps PTSD?
And what are your thoughts on craniosacral therapy and improving symptoms of PTSD?
Sure. Well, think of PTSD, right? It's post-traumatic stress disorder. Your system, at a baseline, we all have like it's like your engine that's idling. It could idle here, or it could be idling at this level. And so when you are in PTSD mode and operating from that, you are on high alert, is how I would like to put it. You're at a subconscious level, your body's always ready for danger, always ready for the trauma to recur. And anything that remotely reminds you or appears to be similar to the original trauma is going to be a trigger years later. What craniosacral system does is, instead of addressing and chasing symptoms, we go directly to the root of the cause. We're working with the nervous system. We're working on calming your nervous system down so that the symptoms automatically just dissipate. Now, is it as easy as get a session and relax? No, but it makes a huge difference.
And I have Danielle. I've been reading a very fascinating book with case studies given to me at AMTA convention. I am simply amazed as I am about to embark on more learning with craniosacral therapy.
Wonderful.
And then Sherry, if you're already a craniosacral therapy practitioner, is there a common restriction area that causes or contributes to sensory processing issues?
No, I can't say that there's just restriction in one area that could cause sensory processing issues. If there was one area, I would say check the brainstem area, because that's where a lot of our sensory integration takes place.
All right. I would also like to mention that Upledger Institute, and Jackie will join us in a second, is located in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida. And previously, over the last 3 years of EduTalks, we've had multiple talks on different aspects of craniosacral therapy. And Jackie, I see you've joined us. Why don't you jump on and share a little more about the Institute, learning opportunities, and craniosacral therapy?
Okay, greetings everyone. My name is Jackie Halderman. I'm the marketing director at the Upledger Institute. We happen to be headquartered in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, but we teach craniosacral therapy seminars all over the world. Binaifer teaches mostly in North America. We have a number of other instructors. I should have started by saying thank you, Binaifer. Thank you, Donnell. It was a wonderful presentation. I see everyone stayed on for it. Binaifer teaches a number of our entry level and upper level courses. She teaches the pregnancy and birthing and pediatrics classes, which covers the sensory processing disorders. Did I misspeak?
I don't teach the pregnancy and birthing.
Don't you anymore? Okay. Okay. But she does teach the other course that I mentioned, the pediatrics courses, which the foundation for those are the entry-level craniosacral therapy courses, because you have to have the fundamentals of craniosacral therapy before you move into that level course. I will be sending an email to all of you that have attended and registered and stayed with us this evening. I'll give you links to some of these courses. I will give you links to some the books that she mentioned. And any questions that you have, you can always look at upledger.com, and I'll include that as well. That is the website where you can find all of the variety of courses we have. We branch out to a number of different specialties. Once you've completed the fundamentals, you could take classes on pediatrics or the nerves or chronic depletion or the immune response system. So we have a number of different avenues you can explore. There's a concussion class. So it's a full curriculum, and we're very proud of it. And we're certainly grateful and proud of Binaifer and all the wonderful work she's done for us. She's taught for us at a number of conferences as well. And so I think I've probably covered everything I can in my short amount of time. Thank you, Donnell, once again for hosting us. And I'll turn it back to Donnell, and you will hear from me shortly.
All right. Tomorrow, check your inbox for a follow-up email with a recording link to tonight's EduTalk. It will include contact information for Upledger Institute, and it will include a handout that I emailed earlier today. If you didn't see it already in your inbox, again, check spam or your junk folder, but I will include that in tomorrow's follow-up email as well. I'd like to mention to watch for invitations on our upcoming EduTalks, October 24th. We have Felicia Brown presenting on create a spa-like experience in any massage session. On November 7th, we have Jennifer Presimone on aromatherapy support for I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it right. Dysautonomy. I could say it all day long, except now. And then November 21st, we have Elise DeFalco presenting on lymphatic detailing and pre and post-op. Again, we appreciate you attending. Thank you so much for your interest to learn more with us. Visit the EduTalk library, archived library on biotone.com. And Sally Fryer Dietz, she did a EduTalk author series for us as well, which can again be found under the EduTalk tab on biotone.com, along with other craniosacral therapists, book reviews, and presentations. With all that, thank you. Be safe, everyone. I believe we got to all the questions. Let me take one more look. And yes, we did. So keep an eye out for future invitations and the follow-up tomorrow. Binaifer and Jackie, thank you so much for being a part of tonight's EduTalk and on a very special and important topic. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Good
Be
night.
well. Take
Good night.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye.